Welcome to Fitness Casual, fitness and nutrition tips for busy people. I'm your host, Andrew Hayes, and with me is the amazing Kat Best.
Hey, everybody.
And we have a special guest today. We have Shang Saavedra, also known as Save My Sense.
Hello.
Welcome. So you have a lot of exciting things to talk about, Shang, and this is typically the part of the podcast where the host will give your backstory and hype you up, and we talked about maybe doing that, but honestly, your story is so amazing that we don't want to steal your thunder. So we're big on hot starts. We have busy clientele. They only have 30, 40 minutes to listen to this, so let's jump right in. You've had a remarkable journey. Give us the background from where you started and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I'm Shang of Save My Sense. I help you make the connection between your mental health and your financial wealth. So if we fix your mental health, we're most likely also going to get you rich, which I think everyone should be excited about. And I made that discovery on my own journey to basically becoming what's called FIRE, financial independence, retire early, which I reached at the ripe young age of 31, which is very unusual in this day and age. And these days, I'm 39 now. I'm a mom of 2 boys. I've been married to my husband for 11 years, and we're multi-millionaires living a work-optional life in sunny Southern California.
I love it. But you had very humble beginnings, or at least your family did. You want to start there and take us through your upbringing a little bit?
Yeah, a very typical immigrant story, I would say. My parents did not come from wealth. I mean, pretty much poverty. In rural China, my dad had the amazing opportunity he was bright, so he tested into a good school and was able to leave China with my mom and me to finish his PhD studies abroad, which he did so in Europe. And then eventually my family moved to the United States when I was 10 years old, and we basically led a pretty middle-class life, or what I thought was a very low income middle class life. I didn't discover until later on that my parents, through their intentional frugality throughout all that time, had been saving up my college fund. And then so when I got into Harvard for college, they're like, we'll fund it. You don't need to apply for scholarships. You don't have to apply for financial aid. And I was just gobsmacked the entire time because I didn't think we had any money to speak of. And then thanks to that education, which I had no financial stress because of it, I was able to exit college, work in management, consulting, strategy for Fortune 500 companies. I got my MBA also with a scholarship. I didn't realize you get scholarships, but I did for my MBA at University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And so through modeling the frugality that my parents showed as a child, to me as a child, and then also with the high incomes that I was able to get from my education, that together led to the buildup of savings that I invested over time.
It's amazing. And now you help other people. So you have a book coming out soon, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But one thing I didn't know until reading your book was that it was maybe your husband's idea, partially, to do FIRE, because we have a lot of most of the clients that we coach or who listen to this podcast have city income type jobs. And so I think it's a very natural progression to get a job, rent a house, buy a house, get a car, all those things. And it sounds like pretty early on your husband planted the seed of what if we do it differently, right? Is that how it went down?
We were both, relative to, I think, the general population, considered to be frugal already. Like, I can just tell I didn't spend as much as my roommates or my classmates. But when we got engaged, he was like, what do you think about the idea of living off of the lower of our 2 incomes as much as we can, so that eventually when we become parents, we don't have to worry about the financial impact of having children. We don't have to worry about paternity, maternity leave that might be unpaid. We didn't know what we would have at that time. And also, quote unquote, the motherhood penalty if I were to stay at home and then try to return to the workforce later. He didn't know that this was called FIRE. I certainly didn't know either. And at first I was just like, okay, idea sounds cool. Hypothetically, I'm like so mentally checked out from being a parent. I was just like, I'll try it, but I'm not like fully bought into it. So I would say when I first started on this journey, I wasn't entirely too happy to do it. I whined a lot. I was very miserable and bitter. But it wasn't until I like personally saw the light and understood what I was working for that it finally clicked.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're probably like, where's my BMW? I'm working hard. I want to spend some money, right?
I wanted handbags. Like I wanted a it handbag all the time, and that was like my gauntlet. I was like, why? Why can't I have it? So
That's incredible. Well, congrats. That's amazing. So we do want to talk about fitness and nutrition a little bit today as well. And we don't know your whole story, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is it fair to say that early on, 20s and 30s, you were grinding it out? Maybe your health wasn't in the best place. Talk us through the journey you've been on, coming up to FIRE. What are some of the changes you've made for your own health?
yeah, I would say I just rode the luck of youth and genetics for a really long time. Like at every annual checkup, they're like, "Yeah, you're fine, you're fine." And this is again my mid to late 20s. But I knew in the back of my head that if I didn't focus on my health, eventually this would catch up to me. And I was already working 70 to 90 hours a week. Like that's just not normal anyway. I started actually in business school. I started by hiring a personal trainer at the local gym. Stuck with it for quite some time, but then I just let busyness be the excuse and I canceled it. Then when I first got to New York City, and that's when my husband and I really started our single income budget experiment, didn't have the money for either a gym or a personal trainer. Luckily, one of my friends was doing a startup where they were trying out how to do group training on an app. Like this is early on 2013, so I mean nowadays we have a lot of this. And I joined one of the beta groups for free. So I had a fitness and nutrition trainer who taught me about weightlifting, taught me about macros. So I knew that dialogue and I was able to commit to it for about half a year, and then she dropped off the app. And so without her presence, I dropped off too. And then again, fits and bits of me trying things. I tried climbing stairs in my apartment building as a way. Did not. Then I tried push-ups, and that didn't work. So it literally wasn't until much later in life when I had a health scare after the birth of my second child that I finally took it seriously.
So an interesting concept that comes up a lot in health and fitness in general, but especially with a lot of the clients we work with, is we have selfless clients. They're parents. They care about their careers, and they put themselves last a lot. And I think you're living proof of you're kind of always busy, and there's kind of always a reason to put it off, right? First, you're trying to earn in your 20s, then you become a mom, now you have your own business. There's always reasons to wait. What do you say to people who maybe now is not the right time, knowing what you know now, given all you've accomplished? Like, what is that? What was that aha moment for you, maybe outside of a health scare, where your health really does impact your success?
I wish I could just start with saying, "Oh, I don't want to die." That was my number one excuse.
Yeah.
I guess I'm motivated by two ways that perhaps might not be normal, but I'll just share it anyway. Number one, I do have a fear of dying in a horrible and young way, and I've seen examples of a lot of cancer in my family. So I was like, I know that if I invest in my health early now, at least I can put off some of what's inevitably going to happen genetics wise. So that was my number one goal, and I also know financially that if I invest in my health now, it would also cost me less in my retirement years, and I like to keep my money. The second is just sheer willpower, and I think that's just a mark of everything that I've pushed myself through in life, which is actually telling myself it's okay to set aside time for something you really don't want to do, but it's something that you have to do because, Shang, that's adulting. You gotta adult. And so I put in the 3 times a week block into my calendar to go to the gym. Did not like it at all in the beginning. Hated it. I was just like, I'm just forcing myself to go. This is just a chore. You just have to get through it. And I would say for many months, that was the only mindset that could get me through the monotony that is going to the gym and not seeing results, is just seeing it as a form of adulting.
I love that. Yeah, you touched on something really important that Kat and I talk about a lot, that a lot of trainers, coaches talk about a lot, which is scheduling time to do it. Because your boss isn't going to tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, maybe you should go to the gym right now. It seems like a good time to take a break. And so kudos to you. When we were working together, the schedule we agreed on was Monday, Wednesday, Friday at your YMCA. And you stuck with it probably better than any other client, even though it was still fairly new for you. And I'm sure you don't mind me sharing, like, you were a little intimidated. The machines didn't always fit you. Like, it wasn't easy for you either.
Yeah.
And you just put it on your calendar, and it was one of the things in your week that you had to do. And I think that's a really good point. It's simple, but it's often overlooked, as if you don't make time for it, then there won't be time for it. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And then over time, you'll find better reasons. Like now I do see results, so I'm motivated. And number two, I have some pissy days dealing with my toddler children where I'm like, I gotta work this anger out at the gym because I don't want to take it out on them. So that's actually now something that I do look forward to, is literally, an hour of time in my own head, but without my children around me.
Yeah. Yep. That's fantastic. Yeah, you talk in your book about how personal finance is personal, and I love that. And I don't think that's touched on enough. It seems like a simple concept again, but everyone's always just shouting blanket advice in the financial world, and I think it's a really good point. What about your fitness and nutrition journey? Kat and I totally believe as well that it's very personal. You can be absolutely jacked but not be very flexible. You can just do yoga, and in many ways that's healthy. You can run a marathon. There's lots of ways to be fit. How did you determine your goals? Are those changing? Are you just hyper-focused on targets? How did you decide what you wanted to focus on?
Yeah. The biggest shift for me was realizing if something that everybody is doing just isn't working out for you, then don't try to do what everyone else is doing. So I grew up with a lot of runners in my friend circles. Like practically everybody ran. So I thought that I was supposed to run too. And it took me a really long time to realize that it just wasn't the right form of fitness for me, that just intellectually, and I found this in the personal finance community, most of the top personal finance folks who share kind of my mindset are also weightlifters. I don't know why. I think it's maybe the analytics behind it, or that it is like very like structural. There's, you can keep yourself to a very set series of goals. You just keep going, you keep going. And that stuck with me as well. Now, I'm not like jacked like a lot of the male personal finance creators, but I'm just like, I feel like I get the mindset as to why this makes a lot of sense for me. And I was like, if it works, then you keep going 110% behind it, because going with something that works to your personal nature and how you think is so much easier. And at least I'm always telling people, focus on your strengths. Like, don't try to, fix yourself by fixing a weakness. Like, that's gonna be just fighting an uphill battle. Like, start by fixing yourself by going towards a strength, and then eventually your weakness will develop a little bit better as well.
I love that. That's amazing. So you talk about in your book and on social as well, you are very opinionated, which we love, and this is why you have such a rabid fan base. And you are very frugal, and you get a lot of hate for it sometimes, right? People are like, oh, you don't look like you have money. And I think that is, again, a correlation to fitness and nutrition, where there's this aesthetic that people look for that defines fitness. Six-pack, skinny, whatever it might be. And Kat and I are both pretty proud to not endorse that. I mean, if someone wants to look a certain way and they can do it in a healthy way, then great, we help them. But Kat's like, I'm not doing it in my sports bra every day. Like, I'm not taking my shirt off frequently on my Instagram. Like, we try to just promote finding what works for you. Do you ever feel tempted in the financial space to kind of show off your money? Be like, you know what, let me just shut the haters up for a second and take a screenshot of my bank account? Or like, you feel pretty good about, what you're doing, ignore them. How does that feel for you?
In a way, my husband acts as that boundary, because he's like, I'm fine with you becoming the Save My Sense as we know today, but please don't ever share our net worth. Like that was the one thing that I had to promise him. The only time that that rule had to be bent was when a reporter for a journal, writes me, they're like, we have to verify. That's fine. I put it in a password protected file and they see it. But other than that, yeah, I've never shared our net worth beyond just vaguely saying it's in the seven figures. My husband is okay with that. And that boundary, I actually think gives me the freedom to just be like, yeah, I'm not going to care. And as much as I want to, oh yeah, drop mic, let's go. But I think like in living a life that is just carefree and marching to the beat of my own drum and my own values basically expresses the same thing. Like if I caved and tried to live a life that what I think other people need to see, then that's lack of freedom.
Wow. I love that. So I want to spin the conversation a little bit, and I want you, this is going to be a little uncomfortable, but I think it's a really good point for our listeners. Early on when we worked together, we were talking about eating protein. Kat obviously is big on protein and explaining the benefits of that. That was a big change for your diet. And you touched on something that every one of our clients feels, which is protein is a little more expensive. Or at least eating healthy can be a little more expensive. And there are ways around that. We help our clients with that. But you are just so focused on that in a good way that I think you brought to light, hey, I've calculated the rest of the year, like eating the diet that I'm supposed to eat, and it's expensive, right? And I think it's a really good point. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I want our clients to learn from that. So you are, famously frugal. You're incredibly successful. So you feel this push and pull of like, I want to invest in myself, but I also know it's expensive in the short term. How do you balance that, whether it's, protein specifically or maybe everything in life? How do you find that balance of not always saving for the rest of your life when you know you need to invest now?
Yeah. So the one thing that I chose to ignore from you guys is the the recommended amount of protein. So I never really hit the total grams that I should be eating. But instead I said, I understand what you're saying and I agree with you. There should be more protein. I'm just not going to go to the max and I'm going to live with that. I'm going to be okay with it. So I increased my protein intake. And yes, I noticed it impacting my budget, but I did it in a way that I know how to save money. So I live near Aldi, Smart and Final, Costco. I can get protein. And also I get a lot of frozen protein that lowers the cost a lot. And there's a really cool chain near me called Wild Fork. They actually do super sustainable, delicious frozen proteins from all over the world, but because it's sold completely frozen, like deep frozen, you need 24 hours to defrost the darn thing. It's really, really cost effective. And then, so that was the number one change where I was like, I'm just not going to fully listen to Kat and Andrew, and that's going to be okay because I don't fear your judgment. And then the second decision that I made came more from my husband, who has had to adjust his diet all his life for other health reasons. He's just like, Shang, you need to make a choice because you have to. Not because you like it, but you have to. And I was whining because I basically been on a carb comfort diet because I grew up with Chinese food. It's all rice and noodles. Like when you grow up for like 30 plus years of rice and noodles, your body's so used to having all those carbs that when you first take it away, it's almost like a detox, maybe, or like your body just it actually goes into overdrive and craves it. And I noticed that even before I worked with you guys, when I had gestational diabetes with my first child and I really had to control my blood sugar, same thing. Like the moment I told my body I had to limit the sugar, it was like, I need more sugar, and it got like angry. So I was just like, okay, just get through it. So that like sugar angriness probably lasted about 3 to 4 weeks. Like I was just like, just get through it. And after 4 weeks, it stopped. Like my body accepted the change in the macros, the huge shift towards a lot more protein. And it's really telling now that I don't crave the sugars as much anymore. And during a recent fast, I had to do a 24-hour fast for religious reasons. I just ate like huge hunks of chicken breast like in the last hour before the fast started. And it was one of the easiest fasts that I'd ever had because I used a carb load before a fast and it just burned very quickly over the next 6 hours. The protein allowed me to feel more full over the next 24 hours. I was like, oh my gosh, it actually is true what Kat and Andrew have been saying. I put it to test. So
That's funny. Yeah, it's something we see a lot. And it's also common with alcohol reduction. If you drink a lot and then you start to reduce it, you have massive sugar cravings, and that's really hard for our clients too. So it's a good insight. And lots of parallels to finance there too, I'm sure, of thinking long term, setting yourself up for success in the future. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Kat, anything else I missed from our time working with Shang that you think was a good insight for listeners?
No, I think you covered it, but I do have a question because we focus on like the smallest possible steps you could make that make a difference, whether it's like an extra piece of broccoli, 10 extra grams of protein. It does add up. What are the smallest financial steps someone could make? Like not even investing, but like the tiniest baby steps they could start with to save more money or improve just their mindset around money.
yeah, two of my favorites. Number one, don't have Amazon Prime. It is very counterintuitive, but Amazon Prime subscribers on average spend $500 to $600 more a year on Amazon compared to those who do not have it, because the Prime primes you to think, oh, shipping's free, I can just add it to the cart and buy it. Whereas without the Prime, you have to wait until you have $35 minimum. So it's actually putting in a mental barrier to stop you from impulse purchasing. The second thing that made a huge change for me is actually unfollowing any social media source of influence that influences you to buy something. And oftentimes it is like celebrities or just influencers who look beautiful. And these people lead unrealistic sponsored lives. Like most of their feed is sponsored. They're walking advertisement, but people just don't realize it. And I think when you start unfollowing these sources that just make you feel bad about yourself and you follow sources of content that make you feel good, that's where the mindset shift changes. Because many, many times we buy out of scarcity. We buy something because we're like, oh, my life doesn't look like that. So I guess I need to buy what they're selling to make myself feel better.
Comparison. Makes sense. What do you think about, so when it comes to eating healthy, we know that that's great, but it can be then too extreme. Same with fitness. You can work out and then you can over-exercise. Is there such a thing as too much budgeting or being too obsessed with saving money to where it backfires? So maybe you need to loosen up a little bit.
I do differentiate between frugal and cheap.
Okay.
When people look at, like, say, some of the sample numbers I have thrown out, they're like, that's... like, you must not be fun. You don't sound like a fun person to be around. And I'm like, no, sir. Come with me to New York and I'll show you all the ways that I had fun for a really low cost. You just got to be creative. But the one area where I never held back is philanthropy. I always, gift to the full amount that I'm able to organizations that benefit people who I know have far less than I do and really need the help. And I think that for people on the frugal journey, I always say it's okay to be frugal towards yourself, but don't be cheap towards others and the people that you love. Like, at the very least, always spend in accordance with your values system. And so that's also part of the reason why I'm not like super frugal with my children, because A, I don't have to be, and B, like, I want to show them a more balanced way of living life, because mommy and daddy can afford to give them everything. We don't, but we do give them as it is reasonable in, it makes sense when it comes to whatever their behavior is at the time of the day. So
I love that. That's incredible. Yeah, so many nuggets already, which is why everyone needs to read your book. And we'll plug the release in a second. First, tell us about writing the book. You need another thing on your plate, I'm sure, on top of your coaching and all of your social posting and raising kids. What was it like to write the book? Any learnings there? This is a new journey for yourself.
Many of my author friends joke to me, they're like, it's going to feel like having another kid, because it did take me about 6 to 9 months to write the book. I was like, yes and no. For me, I would say I really did have to rejuggle my priorities, because my revenue for Save My Sense took a hit, or like my forecasted revenue took a hit for every hour that I had to focus on the book, I can't focus on my business. So, two main decisions I made. One, I finally started hiring for help. Like, for a long time, I resisted it, but I knew, okay, I'm going to make less money, but at the very least, to keep the business going, I need to have somebody work on it. And then the second thing was I probably again calling back to my willpower. I had a very strict writing schedule for the book. I said I need to get to 60,000 words. I had this many days, so I set a goal of X thousand words per day during the bedtime after my kids go down. I can write, and I just wrote. I was like, I don't care how bad it sounds. You just have to write and get it out, and then edit it later. So that was my writing style, just forced writing, and it worked. I was actually experiencing postpartum depression through half of the book writing, so it had to be rewritten anyway. But I'm glad that at least the forced structure on top of like just a difficult time in my life got me through all of it. So
Good for you. Yeah, I'm hearing a trend with pretty much all of your achievements, which is setting a schedule and sticking to it, which again, we've already talked about, but it's so important. Everybody's busy. There's never going to be you're never just going to wake up on a Friday and say, oh, there's 5 hours to write my book today. What a perfect, serendipitous moment here. It sounds like whether it's fitness, nutrition, budgeting, writing a book, any kind of endeavor that anyone's setting out on, being hyper-focused on your schedule is important.
time is money.
Amazing. That's right. Exactly. So let's talk about your book. The release date is January 14th.
Yes.
And Wealth is a Mindset. Change your mind, change your money. Talk a little bit about what readers can expect to get from your book.
I read 20 personal finance books before writing mine.
Wow.
And I noticed that the vast majority of personal finance books, they all eventually tell you, this is how to budget. This is how to pay off debt. This is how to invest. They're all some flavor of that. But almost none of the books talk about, but where did your beliefs and feelings around money come from? And I had the unfair advantage, I guess, of hundreds of coaching clients who've told me their money stories during the course of me coaching them. I learned about how they grew up as children, what their parents did or did not do, and then traumas and crises that happen during their young adult and adult lifetime that then severely impact the way that they see themselves and therefore their money. And then I tie that together with research that I've done over the years by trawling PubMed and reading as many articles as I could and making the connection, like literally the scientific connection between childhood development, mental health, and the actual ability of your brain to do anything when it comes to personal finances. So the book, I would say the first third explains, hey, if your mental health sucks, your finances suck. And here's why. And then it goes into, here's how we're actually going to fix it. We're going to take those stories from your traumatic past and we're going to heal from that. And then I can teach you everything else. Then I go into, here's how to pay off debt, how to have a budget, how to increase your income, side hustle, invest in all of that. But without the human side of it, most personal finance books are basically just another exercise in math. And I think that's where my book is different in that I bring to life not only my story, which I know is different, but I also brought to life 12 of my coaching clients who I think all embody something that any person reading the book can relate to. So there are stories of divorce, childhood trauma, but also triumphant stories of people overcoming depression and fears and anxieties around money. And I think that anyone reading it would be really inspired to learn from these 12 individuals.
Amazing. That's incredible.
Were you always into mindset stuff, or did that come once you started coaching and you realized how influential that was?
The aha moment was in my own frugal journey. Like I said, the first year of committing to my husband's idea of living off of one income was absolutely miserable. And I thought the entire time was just that I wasn't budgeting well enough. I was like, I just need to commit. Like this whole thing of like, oh, I think it's a commitment issue, when later I realized it was an emotional issue. And that's when I dug into the psychology behind things. I actually read the book, The Power of Habit. And that book I quote in my book as well. It is probably the one book that influenced my book the most. And that's when I realized, oh my goodness, it's not my intelligence at stake. It's actually like how I felt about money as a kid and success. And my childhood bullying actually is, I think, what led to the way that I thought about money as an adult. And once I realized that, it opened up my eyes to so many insights.
It's amazing to see this with you and many other people that we know personally who invest in their own self-development through coaching, through books, through podcasts, and then come up with their own ideas to then spread their opinions to other people to help their self-development, and it continues. And so I love to see that. And then there's another layer too, which you mentioned, which is passing it on to your children. And so I say this to a lot of our clients who are parents, partly joking but partly serious, which is that I hope our coaching business doesn't need to exist in 30 years. I hope that all of the people that we coach and all the other people who invest in their health pass on good habits to their kids so they don't need to hire a nutrition coach in their 30s or 40s or 50s. I know you had a big influence, frugality, from your family. Do you feel like your children are going to benefit significantly from what you're teaching them? Or how is it different, I guess, from maybe how you were brought up?
I hope that my children will also learn to budget and be mindful of their money. I don't think that they're going to be as frugal as my husband and I, only because they are growing up in wealthier circumstances, and there's just some things that we're always going to be able to afford for them and not deny it from them. That being said, I recognize that from observing the habits and behaviors of children of wealthy celebrities, that if I actually live to the max of what my budget could allow, then absolutely no way. My children are not going to be frugal, like very unlikely.
Yep.
So part of my husband and my choice to continue being frugal, it's a conscious choice to raise frugal children who understand and have financial literacy. And I think that's probably the hardest choice that we've like exhibited as parents, because it is so counterintuitive. Like most parents are like, well, once we have money, we should spend it on our kids because we love them. And I'm like, no, you actually still have to maintain boundaries and put limits on things so that you don't raise spoiled children or children who lack financial literacy in the future.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know so many billionaires, which might be you one day if you want, maybe you don't. So many billionaires are famously not giving any money to their children, which is an interesting concept. So you don't have to share, your family planning with us, but I do find it interesting that a lot of people who have achieved so much want their kids to kind of earn it too, because they don't see
I
value
think it's
in this.
literally the number one concern of the ultra wealthy people in the world is, are my children going to, extend that legacy or not?
Yeah, yeah. My kids eat sugar. They understand the importance of pairing it with protein, and they understand the importance of movement, but we're not a no sugar household because I've seen what that kind of restriction can do to clients who kind of grew up that way, thinking sugar is bad and all of that. And so, of course, everything is a personal choice, which we've talked about, but I do totally agree finding that balance and in some ways also letting your children come to their own conclusions, finance, fitness, nutrition, whatever. You want them to have their own mindset,
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. Kat, anything I missed before we wrap up and tell everyone how to get more value nuggets from Shang?
I just have to know, Shang, what your parents think now with where you've ended up. Because I know they were a big motivator for you to do all of these things, but what do they think now?
My parents have relaxed over the years too, and when they observed me going super frugal in New York City, they actually thought it was unnecessary, because they're like, why are you so frugal when we've provided you with every means to not live the way that we did? And because they didn't realize it was early retirement that I was going after. And they're just like, this is so unnecessary. And they even offered to give my husband and my like, do you need money? We can give you money. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing here. And nowadays they see that the choice that I've made to leave corporate, be there for my kids, run Save My Sense, I'm like, okay, we get it now. That's not what we thought she was going to do, but we get it. So I'm really glad that my parents are understanding, even if they wouldn't have done the same thing. And I think that's where I recognize too, yes, I would love for my children to also be fire and like be frugal, but you know what? If they don't end up being that way, at least I tried.
Or they might be
I love
something
that.
totally different. You know, we all
Yeah.
stand on the shoulders of giants, and you turn the frugality into a business and early retirement, and maybe your kids will do something even more amazing. You don't even know what it is yet.
Exactly.
Incredible. Okay, so Wealth is a Mindset comes out on January 14th. You can pre-order it on Amazon, whether you have Prime or not. And how else can people get more? How else can people get more from you, Shang? Follow you on Instagram. Tell us more about you.
Yeah, I'm primarily on Instagram, Save My Sense, all one word, and got some content on YouTube. And if you manage to find me on LinkedIn, you can follow me there too. But Instagram's the main one, and SaveMySense.com has some free downloads as well for people who get the book, so definitely check it out.
Fantastic. Anything else you want our listeners to take away today? Anything else we didn't get to mention?
I end my book with this message, which is to do it scared, but do it anyway. And I think I like to impart that for fitness, being a parent, whatever. It's you never know what's going to happen, but you might as well try something instead of nothing. And don't like put high expectations against it. Just do it and see what happens, and you can always change later on.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on today. We're really excited for other people to follow you. We do have some of your followers who've worked with us. We actually had a call last week, I think, with one of your followers who's also retired at 40. So people are listening to what you're saying and finding success of their own. So congrats on helping other people as well. Again, if you want more from Shang, follow her at Save My Sense on Instagram. You can pre-order the book Wealth is a Mindset for release on January 14th. You can follow me on Instagram at Andrew Hayes Life and Kat at Kat Best Wellness. Stay hydrated, everybody. Stay frugal. We'll see you for the next one.
Bye, guys.